As I stood on the stage, my fingers tightly clutching the diploma in my hand, a flood of memories washed over me. The cheers of the crowd faded into a distant hum as I glanced sideways at Grace, my younger sister, who beamed with pride and excitement. Her happiness was genuine. It always was. Yet, beneath my smile lay a hidden reservoir of resentment and hurt that had been silently building over the years. Growing up, it seemed like Grace could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Her accomplishments were celebrated with fanfare, every good grade praised, every talent nurtured with encouragement. Meanwhile, I was often left to fend for myself, my achievements barely acknowledged and quickly overshadowed by Grace's next triumph. Why isn't Olivia more like her sister? I'd often hear them murmur behind closed doors, their voices carrying through walls and straight into my heart. Today should have been one of those moments when all my hard work and perseverance were finally recognized. But instead, standing here next to Grace in our caps and gowns under the bright gymnasium lights, I felt unseen once again. Our parents sat in the audience. I could almost predict their expressions. Warm smiles plastered on their faces for Grace's shining moment while I stood beside her in an unintentional shadow. A voice inside me whispered relentlessly, "You're strong too. You've always been strong." But for so long, I had let that voice be drowned out by their subtle comparisons and dismissals. In that moment on stage, as the applause filled the hall for us both, a realization struck me. The injustice wasn't just in how they treated me, but in how I'd allowed it to define me. It was time to step out from behind Grace's shadow, not because I needed anyone else's validation, but because I deserved it for myself. And so began a new chapter, not one defined by their judgment, but by my own self-acceptance and resolve. The words still echo in my mind, a chilling reminder of the moment everything changed. She deserved it, but you didn't. There I stood, frozen in disbelief as my parents casually shattered my dreams of going to college. It was almost as if time stood still, and in that deafening silence, I heard the unmistakable sound of my heart breaking. Growing up, Grace and I were inseparable. She was my sister, my confidant, my best friend. But as we stood on the precipice of our futures, everything began to unravel. It started with hushed conversations behind closed doors and quickly escalated to this soul-crushing betrayal. Why her and not me? What had I done so wrong? Their explanation rang hollow in my ears, a feeble attempt to justify the unjustifiable. "You didn't work hard enough," they claimed. Grace applied herself more. Yet deep down, I knew these were just excuses masking an unspoken favoritism that had always lurked beneath the surface. I remember looking at Grace, hoping for some sign of remorse or solidarity. Her eyes met mine briefly, but instead of comfort, they mirrored a complex mix of guilt and relief she barely tried to conceal. My life split into before and after those words were spoken. Confusion gave way to anger, then sadness settled in like an unwelcome guest who refuses to leave. As much as it hurt to accept it, this wasn't just about money. It was about my worth in their eyes. And so began my journey, not just one toward education or self-sufficiency, but toward reclaiming my own value beyond their skewed perceptions. Their decision may have set me back, but it also ignited a fire within me, a fierce determination to prove them wrong. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about rewriting my narrative. Growing up, I always believed my family was the epitome of suburban bliss. Our house sat nestled on a quiet cul-de-sac, pristine as a postcard, with its bright white picket fence and meticulously trimmed hedges. Outsiders often commented on how lucky I was to be part of such a perfect family. But beneath the surface, where the manicured lawns ended and the front door closed behind us, a different story unfolded. A story that still resonates within me today. "Olivia, you know your sister needs more support," my mother would say, her voice dripping with unspoken expectations. I'd nod obediently, swallowing words that felt lodged in my throat. My sister, ever so graceful and accomplished in their eyes, seemed to cast a shadow so wide that it enveloped all my small victories. It was as if each gold star on her report card diminished any accomplishment of mine. In those moments alone in my room, the only place where I could let down my guard, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder if what I felt was real or just some figment of youthful rivalry. Why am I never enough? I'd whisper into the silence, hoping for an answer that never came. Family dinner conversations were always centered around her latest triumphs, her future prospects. Occasionally, they'd turn to me with questions about school or friends, but their eyes always flickered back to her before I could finish responding. It felt like living in a perpetual audition for love and attention, a contest I was doomed to lose. As years passed, clarity began dawning on me like an unwelcome guest at a party. This wasn't normal. It wasn't fair. The realization hit hard, but also ignited something deep within. Perhaps the first spark of rebellion against the invisible chains of favoritism. I knew then that acknowledging this truth was only the beginning. Something had to change, starting with me recognizing my own worth. Growing up, I always felt like a shadow in my own home. My sister Grace was the golden child, always showered with attention and expensive gifts. Meanwhile, I was left on the sidelines, trying to figure out where I fit into the family puzzle. I remember birthdays where Grace would receive the latest gadgets and designer clothes, while my gifts were practical, mundane, a new backpack or school supplies. It wasn't about the material things, it was about the love that seemed to seep through each gift she received. Watching her bask in the glow of our parents' adoration felt like standing outside in the rain, watching everyone else warm and dry inside. Every time they praised her accomplishments or her beauty, it was another reminder that I was invisible, not worthy of the same affection. "Look at what Grace did. Isn't she amazing?" they would say with such pride. And every time, "Oh, Olivia, you should be more like your sister." I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that material things weren't everything. But deep down, a part of me yearned for even a fraction of that attention. "Why can't they see me?" I'd whisper in the quiet moments of solitude as if hoping the universe might answer back. The unfairness twisted within me like a bitter vine, wrapping tighter with each passing year. How could they not realize how their favoritism chipped away at my self-worth? I wasn't just a footnote in Grace's story. I had dreams and struggles too. There were days when I caught glimpses of myself in the mirror and wondered if something was wrong with me. If maybe I just wasn't enough to deserve their love. But those moments always came with a surge of defiance as well. A silent promise to myself. One day, I'll step out from her shadow and they'll have no choice but to see me. You know, they say that family is supposed to be your biggest supporter, the ones who lift you up when the world tries to bring you down. But for me, it wasn't always like that. My dad, he never really saw what I saw in myself. Art was my escape, my passion, but to him, it was just a distraction from what he thought was important. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, the dull hum of our old refrigerator filling the silence as I sketched furiously on a scrap piece of paper. Each stroke of the pencil was like a breath of fresh air, freeing me from a world where I felt unheard and unseen. But just as quickly as I found refuge, his words would cut through like icy shards. "Olivia," he'd say with that tone, so dismissive it made me cringe inside. "Art's not going to put food on the table. You need to focus on something practical." I would nod, pretending to agree while something inside me wilted under his disapproval. But then there was Grandma Ruth, a beacon in my life. She saw something in me that my father didn't want to acknowledge. Her eyes sparkled with understanding every time she looked at my drawings. "Oh, Liv," she'd declare with such warmth in her voice, "you have a gift. Never let anyone take that away from you." Her words wrapped around my heart like a comforting hug. In those moments with Grandma Ruth, I found validation and hope, a glimmer that maybe one day I'd prove him wrong. I realized then that belief doesn't have to come from everyone. Sometimes all it takes is one person who truly sees you. And right there at Grandma Ruth's side, I felt seen. They always said I wouldn't amount to much, those whispers from the shadows, doubting eyes following my every step. But standing here, clutching the thin sheet of paper that declared my victory in the regional business plan competition, I finally had proof they were wrong. When I first entered the competition, part of me wondered if I was merely chasing a mirage. Business and economics were not just subjects, they were my refuge, a world where logic could outshine chaos and strategy could overcome unpredictability. To me, crafting a business plan was like painting on a fresh canvas, each decision a stroke leading towards a masterpiece. Every late night spent hunched over my desk, every early morning meeting fueled by caffeine and endless passion was worth this moment. The judge's announcement echoed in my mind like a sweet melody. And the winner is Olivia. My heart skipped a beat as realization washed over me. You did it, I whispered to myself, feeling a swell of pride spread through my chest. It wasn't just about winning, it was about proving my worth to myself and those who never believed in me. I remember how nerve-wracking it was when I first presented my plan. The anxiety clawed at me, an insistent whisper reminding me of potential failure. But with each word spoken confidently into the mic, that voice grew quieter, until all that remained was silence, and then applause. As I gazed out at the audience, seeing nods of approval from respected figures in business, something shifted within me. This victory wasn't just mine, it was for every small voice inside that ever dared to dream big amidst doubt. I folded the certificate carefully, knowing it was more than just paper. It was validation, a tangible testament to perseverance and resilience. This is only the beginning, I thought, stepping away from the podium with renewed resolve. I felt the hollow ache forming every time I watched them shower grace with praise and gifts. In the quiet moments, as I sat at my desk under the dim glow of a single lamp, buried in textbooks until midnight became morning, I couldn't help but wonder why my achievements disappeared beneath the shadow of her spotlight. A perfect 4.0 GPA, they say, should be a parent's pride. But in our home, it was merely a whisper drowned out by Grace's loud and constant celebrations. Every day after school, I'd trade my backpack for an apron, clocking in at the local diner where the scent of grease clung to my clothes long after I'd left. My feet ached from hours on them, my hands sore from serving others when all I wanted was to be recognized myself. Olivia, my manager called one evening as I wiped down tables after closing. You were amazing today, as always. Her words were kind but carried little weight compared to the silence that awaited me at home. As I trudged through our front door late into the night, the house was dark except for Grace's room, illuminated like a beacon. She bragged about her latest exploits during dinner while our parents hung on every word, their admiration palpable like electricity in the air. Despite everything, part of me held on to hope, a small flame burning steadily that soon they'd see me. See how hard I worked, not just for myself, but for our family too. Yet each time their eyes passed over me as if I were invisible, chipped away at that hope. What more must I do to earn their love? This question echoed endlessly within me, each iteration more desperate than the last. And as another day began with its promises of new struggles and unseen victories, I resolved that one day, somehow, I would find a way to be seen. The sound of applause was deafening, but it was all for Grace. I stood there, invisible, as our family erupted in celebration. Congratulations, Grace! You're going to Westfield University, they cheered, their voices ringing with pride and joy. In that moment, a bitter truth settled in my heart. My own acceptance letter to Westfield lay crumpled and unnoticed at the bottom of my bag. I had worked so hard for this, pouring countless hours into studying, pushing myself beyond exhaustion to achieve what I thought would be a shared moment of triumph. But instead, it felt like my dreams were swallowed whole by the shadow of my sister's success. As I watched Grace bask in the glory of her achievement, a familiar pang of hurt twisted inside me. It seemed as if all their love and attention had always been reserved solely for her. I wondered silently, why am I never enough? Every congratulatory hug she received felt like a reminder of my perpetual invisibility. My thoughts spiraled into darkness. Was it because she was the perfect daughter, the one who always managed to shine brighter, laugh louder? Each question gnawed at my confidence. That night lingered painfully in the corners of my mind as I slipped away from the celebration unnoticed. Silence enveloped me as I sat alone in my room, clutching my acceptance letter like a lifeline no one else could see. But deep down, something stirred within me, an ember that refused to die out completely. This wasn't just about going to university. This moment was about proving that I too could stand tall in the light of recognition one day. And so began the quiet resolve to claim my rightful place at Westfield University, not just for my sake, but for anyone who has ever felt overshadowed or undervalued. I remember that evening vividly, a quiet dinner that soon became a turning point in my life. The scent of roasted chicken filled the air, mingling with the tension I hadn't yet noticed. My father sat at the head of the table, his eyes distant and somber. We exchanged pleasantries, talked about mundane things, the weather, our day's events, and then came the moment that would change everything. "We need to talk," he began, his voice heavy with an uncharacteristic gravity that sent a chill down my spine. I paused, fork midway to my mouth, eyeing him cautiously. There was something about the way he spoke, calm yet edged with uncertainty, that set alarm bells ringing in my chest. "I've done some calculations," he continued, eyes now meeting mine with an intensity that made me hold my breath. "And it seems we only have enough money to pay for Grace's tuition this year." His words landed like a blow. Silence stretched across the table as I struggled to process what he had just said. At first, disbelief cloaked my mind. This couldn't be true. It must be some sort of mistake, a cruel joke. But as I searched his face for any hint of jest, all I found was the cold truth staring back at me. My heart clenched as reality sunk its sharp teeth into my dreams and ambitions. Grace, my younger sister, deserving yet unaware of the sacrifice being asked of me, of us. With each passing second, I felt my world crumble under the weight of those simple words. A decision had already been made, and my path seemed to dim before me. But beneath the initial wave of despair rose an unexpected resolve. This wasn't just about money, it was about fairness and justice within our own family dynamic. And somehow, amidst the confusion and hurt, I knew this wasn't where my story would end. The air in the living room was thick with unspoken truths and palpable tension as my parents looked at me, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and resolve. "Grace has shown more promise," they said, their words hanging in the space between us like a curtain slowly falling, revealing a scene I had hoped wasn't true. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat resonating with disbelief and betrayal. I couldn't help but wonder how we had arrived at this point. Was it something I did or didn't do? The question looped in my mind, leaving behind a trail of self-doubt and frustration. Every moment of hard work I had poured into my studies felt invalidated, overshadowed by Grace's supposed brilliance. The spotlight had always seemed to shine brighter on her, but now it was blinding. "Maybe you should look into taking out loans," Dad suggested casually, almost as if he were discussing the weather. My mind spun at the thought, the crushing weight of debt before I'd even stepped into adulthood. "Or consider community college," Mom chimed in, her voice softer, yet it cut just as deep. In that moment, I felt small, like a shadow cast by Grace's ever-growing light. Yet beneath the swirling emotions of anger and sadness, there was a flicker of defiance. This was not going to be how my story ended. As they continued to discuss options over me, their voices becoming indistinct murmurings against the roar of my thoughts, I felt something shift within me. A new resolve took root, one that refused to let favoritism dictate my future. This wasn't just about college anymore, it was about proving that I was more than their second choice. And with that realization came a surge of determination. I would carve out my own path and show them what I was truly capable of. I never imagined that my pleas would fall on such deaf ears. But there I was, standing amidst the ruins of my crumbled hopes, my protests dismissed coldly as if they held no weight at all. The sting of their disregard burned deep within me, leaving a hollow ache where faith and trust once thrived. How could they ignore the truth so blatantly? It felt as if I were shouting into an abyss, my words swallowed by the darkness of indifference. "Please, you have to believe me," I had implored, searching their eyes for a glimmer of understanding. But all I found was a steely wall of disbelief that refused to budge. "You're overreacting," they'd said with a dismissive wave, brushing off my concerns as though they were nothing more than dust on an old shelf. The rejection clung to me like a shadow as I retreated from their icy glares, feeling smaller with every step I took. Their lack of empathy left me raw and exposed, like an open wound that refused to heal. How could people so close to me not see what was happening right in front of them? As the weight of their dismissal pressed heavily upon me, an idea began to form, a flicker of hope in the despair that threatened to consume me. My grandmother. She had always been my safe haven, her comforting presence a balm for my weary soul. Her wisdom and kindness were legendary within our family, Surely she would understand where others had failed. With determination fueling my weary limbs, I made my way to her home, each step punctuated by the sound of my heart beating louder with resolve. I needed her guidance more than ever now. Someone who would listen without judgment and offer solace in this storm of betrayal. Desperation gave way to resolve. I would find support in the one person who'd never turned me away. Standing on the precipice of doubt, I felt my resolve begin to crumble. The weight of past failures and harsh criticisms clung to me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Why even bother? Echoed in my mind. A relentless taunt from the voices that once told me I wasn't enough. Yet, amidst this cacophony of self-doubt, one voice pierced through with unwavering clarity, Grandma Ruth's. I remember that day vividly. Her kitchen was filled with the warm aroma of freshly baked apple pie, her way of offering comfort and sage advice. "Olivia, come sit," she gestured with her wrinkled hand, her eyes twinkling with a wisdom honed by years. I sat across the table, feeling small, almost childlike again. The burden of expectations weighed heavily as I confided in her, confessing my hesitations about attending the event, the one that could finally showcase my potential if only I had the courage to embrace it. "Olivia," Grandma began softly yet firmly, "you have something special inside you, something that no one else can take away." Her belief was a lighthouse cutting through my fog of uncertainty. I wanted to argue back, to tell her about all those times I tried and failed. But before the words could form, she placed her warm hand over mine. "Don't let fear decide your fate," she urged gently. "Believe in what you can be." Her words were more than encouragement. They were a lifeline. That afternoon, wrapped in her unwavering faith and conviction, something shifted inside me. A flicker of hope glimmered where only doubt existed before. Grandma Ruth saw the potential within me long before anyone else did, including myself. As I left her house, determination replaced hesitation. This wasn't just about attending an event. It was a step towards reclaiming my confidence and proving to myself that I am capable of more than what others believe, and more importantly, what I believe. I never imagined that the first step to reclaiming my life would be moving into a cramped, dimly lit apartment. As I stood at the threshold of my new home, an unsettling mix of fear and determination swirled in my chest. This was it, the start of my self-made journey, the path I needed to take for a future no longer dictated by others. My days were a relentless cycle, waking before dawn to face the chill of early mornings as I trudged to my first job, a barista at the local cafe. The scent of coffee mingled with exhaustion became my companion, a constant reminder that every dollar earned was a step closer to freedom. With each order I took and smile I forced, I held on to one thought. This is for me. By midday, I transitioned into a different routine, a grueling shift at the retail store across town where I spent hours standing under harsh fluorescent lights. My legs ached and my spirit sometimes faltered, yet within me burned an unyielding resolve. The customers' voices became background noise while I silently recited my dreams. Graduating college, building a career on my terms. In between jobs, I'd rush to class with barely enough time to catch my breath. Yet every lecture attended, every exam aced was another brick laid in constructing a future that belonged solely to me. Funding my education from scratch meant sacrifices. Sacrifices that came at the cost of sleep and leisure but rewarded me with something far more priceless. Independence. Every night as exhaustion lulled me to sleep in that tiny apartment, I'd think about how far I'd come. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving against all odds. My life's choices were mine alone now, crafted meticulously through perseverance and hard work. And as the city lights flickered outside my window like stars guiding sailors lost at sea, hope whispered softly within me, "It's only just begun." Just when I thought the shadows couldn't get any darker, a beacon of light pierced through. I was sitting in my dimly lit room, surrounded by the deafening silence that spoke louder than any words could. The weight of betrayal and heartbreak sat heavily on my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. That's when my phone buzzed, breaking the oppressive stillness around me. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another painful reminder of what I'd lost. Another message from my past that haunted me in these quiet moments. But something urged me to look. Maybe it was hope, or perhaps sheer desperation. The screen lit up with a message from Grandma. Her texts were rare treasures, filled with wisdom and warmth that seemed to transcend time itself. "Remember who you are," she wrote. Just 4 simple words, yet they resonated within me with an intensity I hadn't realized I needed. I found myself reading those words over and over again as if they held some secret power to pull me out of this abyss I had fallen into. "Remember who you are." It was as though Grandma had reached across time and space to shake me gently awake from this nightmare. A floodgate of memories opened up inside me. All those times she'd held my hand when life felt too big to handle on my own. Her gentle smile that told me everything would be okay, even when the world said otherwise. Suddenly, I wasn't just a broken heart in a cold room. I was part of something bigger, something eternal. Grandma's text rekindled a flame within me, a fierce determination that I thought had been extinguished forever. In that moment of clarity, fueled by her belief in me, I decided to rise up once more. And so began my journey back into the light, where shadows dissolved behind the strength inherited from generations before me. In the midst of my darkest hours, when I felt utterly alone and abandoned, a small glimmer of hope emerged. It was during one of those sleepless nights, the kind where anxiety coils around your heart like a serpent, whispering all your deepest fears, that I realized I couldn't fight this battle alone. My financial woes were suffocating, threatening to crush the fragile dreams I'd built upon since childhood. The next morning, with trembling hands and a heart weighed down by desperation, I stepped into the financial aid office. My voice wavered as I recounted my struggles to the counselor. Every word felt like an admission of weakness. But instead of judgment, I found kindness. "We're here to help," she assured me gently. Her words were like a soothing balm on an open wound. "You're not alone in this," she continued, offering resources and solutions that illuminated paths I hadn't dared to imagine. As she spoke, a flood of gratitude surged through me. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this maze. My teachers mirrored this unexpected support. With quiet understanding and unwavering belief in my potential, they rallied behind me. Conversations that once felt intimidating turned into dialogues filled with empathy and encouragement. They weren't just educators, they became allies in my struggle. "You have so much potential," one of them said softly after class, pausing to meet my eyes with sincerity that warmed my soul. "Don't let this temporary setback define you." Those words lingered long after she'd left the room, a mantra against despair. With each passing day, the overwhelming tide began to recede ever so slightly. I could breathe again without feeling like the world would collapse beneath my feet at any moment. In those small acts of kindness and solidarity, I found strength to continue fighting for my education and future. And for the first time in a long while, hope wasn't just an elusive dream, it was tangible. It's strange how two lives can run parallel, yet feel worlds apart. I often found myself lost in the laughter and chaos of college life, a bubble of comfort that shielded me from reality's harsher edges. Yet, lurking beneath my every smile was a shadow I chose not to see: Olivia's silent struggle. Every morning, as the sun filtered softly through our dorm window, I'd hear the rustle of pages as she meticulously balanced her checkbook. "Another day, another dollar," she'd say with a forced cheerfulness. But her eyes told a different story, a story of relentless sacrifice. Meanwhile, I floated on a cloud of carefree moments. Late-night study sessions turned into impromptu dance parties, instant noodles shared between giggles. It was easy to forget about those who lived just beyond the perimeter of our privileged playground. But Olivia wasn't so lucky. While I fretted over which elective to pick, Olivia worried if she'd have enough money for lunch. She was caught in a relentless cycle, financial aid forms piling up like fallen leaves while the rest of us fell into petty complaints about professors or pop quizzes. I wonder now how I could have been so blind, so wrapped up in my own world that I missed the quiet battles happening right next to me. Her resilience was hidden behind a veil she wore skillfully every day. "Grace," she'd say with an odd look in her eye when asked about her weekend plans, "I'll just be working." She worked every spare hour while I danced through mine. Now, looking back, there's an ache inside me, a desperate need to bridge the chasm that once seemed invisible but now looms large and unavoidable, dividing our lives like night and day. I never imagined that the chaos of my life outside those university walls would become my greatest asset inside them. But as each lecture unfolded, I realized that my tumultuous past was a hidden weapon, sharpening my instincts like no textbook ever could. Sitting in business class, surrounded by peers who seemed so polished and prepared, I felt like an outsider. At first glance, they had it all: resources, connections, confidence. Meanwhile, my knowledge didn't come from privilege or theory, it came from survival. Every setback I faced at home with my family's failing business taught me lessons no professor could put on a syllabus. In class discussions about risk management and strategic planning, I found myself inadvertently drawing parallels to those nights spent balancing ledgers by candlelight and negotiating with creditors at our kitchen table. "Olivia," the professor called one afternoon, pulling me out of my reverie. "Can you give us your take on handling financial crises?" My heart raced. The room seemed to narrow its gaze on me. Taking a deep breath, I replied, "In real-world scenarios, it's not just about numbers or strategies. It's about understanding what you stand to lose if you fail. The stakes are personal." My classmates leaned in as I spoke of resilience forged through adversity. It dawned on me then, this wasn't just academic for me. It was personal survival transmuting into professional insight. Those moments of vulnerability transformed into opportunities for empowerment. And so, each class became less intimidating and more invigorating. I wasn't just learning business principles, I was living them anew through every case study discussed around me. I felt the tides turning within me, from someone merely surviving her circumstances to someone wielding them as a force for change. Little did they know that while others read about climbing mountains in theory, I'd already scaled Everest in spirit. Have you ever felt so alone that even the walls seemed to whisper your fears back to you? That was me, standing at the edge of my life, watching shadows of doubt creep in as I tried to navigate a world that seemed unyieldingly cold. My real family, those who should have been my anchors, had drifted away, leaving behind only echoes of support that never truly materialized. And just when it felt like I would drown in my isolation, Mia appeared out of nowhere, a beacon cutting through the fog. Living with Mia was like discovering a secret ally in a battle I hadn't realized I was fighting. She wasn't just a roommate, she became an unexpected pillar in the shaky structure of my life. It started with small gestures, sharing meals when I couldn't afford more than ramen noodles and offering her notes when mine were buried under stress's weight. But it quickly grew into something much more profound. I remember one particular night perfectly. We sat at our rickety dining table, our books spread between us like shared treasure troves of knowledge. Mia looked up from her textbook with those kind eyes, saying softly, "You know you're not alone in this." Her words were simple, but struck me like a thunderbolt of warmth amid my perpetual winter. Inside, my heart swelled with a mix of gratitude and awe. How did this person, once just someone I shared rent with, become the sister I never had? Every day she proved her loyalty not through grandiose gestures, but consistent acts of kindness and understanding. Her unwavering support didn't just help me survive, it taught me what it meant to truly live again. As each day unfolded, I realized that sometimes family isn't about blood, but about those who choose to stand by us when the world seems intent on leaving us behind. And Mia chose me. This revelation transformed everything. But could this newfound sense of belonging withstand the trials yet to come? The answer lay somewhere just beyond the horizon, unseen but deeply felt. The moment I hung up the phone, my world felt as though it had crumbled beneath me. Losing my job wasn't just a financial blow, it was a punch to my very sense of self-worth. As I sat there in the dim light of my kitchen, the familiar hum of the refrigerator seemed louder than ever, echoing in the silence that filled my apartment. "What now?" I whispered into the void, my voice barely above a whisper, as if admitting defeat would somehow make it more real. My thoughts raced with fears of unpaid bills and dwindling savings. But then, amid the chaos in my mind, a spark of determination flickered. I couldn't stay in this pit of despair. I had to climb out. Reaching out for help felt like surrendering all over again, but it was necessary. When I received emergency aid, it was like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Not enough to pull me ashore, but enough to keep me afloat for just a while longer. For the first time in weeks, I dared to hope. And then came the opportunity that would change everything: a research assistant role. I remember staring at the email offer with disbelief, rereading each word until they etched themselves into my heart. It was more than just a job, it was a chance to rebuild. This is it, I thought as courage crept in beneath my skin. Could this be the path to reclaiming control over my life? The position promised new skills and experiences, doorways to futures I'd never allowed myself to imagine before. As dawn's light spilled across my room the next morning, illuminating the once shadowed corners, I felt something shift inside me. Hope didn't seem like such an elusive dream anymore. It was tangible and within reach. With resolve ignited anew, I stepped forward with purpose toward these newfound horizons. It all began with a quiet determination and a spark of defiance. I remember sitting in my cramped apartment, the walls pressing in like the doubts that swirled around me. But deep inside, there was this relentless voice whispering, "You can do more." That's when I decided to launch my own virtual assistant business. Starting small was both thrilling and terrifying. Each task, each client felt like an immediate challenge to prove myself. In those early days, I wore many hats, the eager assistant ready to manage calendars and emails by day, and by night, the strategist plotting how to expand my reach. Friends would glance at me curiously, their skepticism barely masked when they'd ask, "Why don't you just get a stable job?" But I had tasted something intoxicating: freedom. The freedom to craft my destiny without anyone else dictating my worth. Slowly but surely, my little venture gained traction. Word of mouth spread faster than I could have imagined. Clients praised not just efficiency, but a kind of intuitive understanding that set me apart. My confidence grew with each satisfied customer. Every success felt like a building block stacked against the precarious tower of doubt that others had tried to construct around me. What started as simple organization tasks burgeoned into something far more complex and rewarding. I realized then that this wasn't merely about providing services. It was about creating solutions and crafting digital strategies that transformed other businesses. With each new skill acquired, each new service added, I saw the blueprint of something bigger forming right before my eyes. The transition from a solo operation to a full-fledged digital agency was seamless yet profound, a metamorphosis fueled by passion and resilience. Little did they know back then, those who doubted, that this small seed would grow into such a thriving enterprise. And so began the journey from whispered dreams to reality, a testament that sometimes in life, all you need is a tiny spark of belief. The moment I received the scholarship letter, a wave of disbelief washed over me. It felt like a lifeline tossed into the turbulent sea I'd been navigating alone for so long. For years, my hard work had gone unnoticed, or worse, belittled. But now, here was undeniable proof that I mattered, that what I did had value. I remember clutching the letter to my chest, feeling its crisp paper edges digging into my skin, a reminder that this moment was real. With every word etched on that page, a new world unfolded before me. A year without the crippling worry of tuition fees, a chance to breathe and focus entirely on my passion for learning. As I walked through the hallways of school, something shifted. Where there used to be whispers laced with judgment and doubt, now there were murmurs of admiration and respect. It was as if, overnight, my peers saw me in a new light. No longer invisible, but seen. But it wasn't just about their recognition. This honor solidified something within myself. The relentless hours spent poring over textbooks and sacrificing sleep weren't in vain. My dreams were valid and achievable. Yet beneath the elation lay a simmering resentment towards those who never believed in me, who thought I wouldn't amount to anything beyond their limited expectations. This scholarship was more than an opportunity. It was my silent rebellion against every voice that ever tried to diminish me. As the days passed, I channeled this mix of vindication and empowerment into everything I did. Each assignment completed wasn't just another tick on a checklist, it was a testament to my resilience. And with every new accolade or recognition came another victory, not just over others' perceptions, but over my own insecurities. This is only the beginning, I thought to myself every morning with renewed determination. The world finally knows my name, but there's more to come. Have you ever experienced a moment so profound, it felt like the universe was finally giving you a break? For me, that moment came when my name was announced as the winner of the national business competition. It was as if time had stopped, and all the struggles, all the late nights and self doubt had led to this single point in time. There I was, sitting among a sea of hopeful faces, each participant clutching their own dreams as tightly as I held mine. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Tension danced in the air. My heart pounded like a drum inside my chest, a constant reminder that everything I had fought for was on the line. When they called my name, everything around me faded away. I could hardly believe it. Me, Olivia Jenkins, standing here victorious against all odds. As I walked up to receive my prize, memories flooded back. Endless hours spent hunched over business plans, sacrificing sleep for success while doubts whispered maliciously in the back of my mind. Maybe you're not good enough, they'd say. But now those doubts were silenced by the roaring applause echoing around me. $50,000 was more than just a number. It was validation. Validation that every ounce of effort hadn't been in vain. Proof to myself and to everyone else that I could stand tall and proud. As I stood there with that oversized check in hand, something shifted within me. A newfound confidence blossomed from deep inside. This wasn't just victory, it was liberation. This is only the beginning, Olivia, I reminded myself as I gazed into a new future painted with possibilities. A future where I would no longer hold back, where limits were meant to be shattered. There's a moment in every life when you find yourself at the edge of an abyss, realizing that the next step could lead to your undoing, or your salvation. For me, that moment came with the arrival of my midterm grades. I remember sitting on my bed, clutching those papers as if they held secrets written in a language I couldn't understand. It felt as though the walls were closing in, each letter and number a heartbeat hammering away in my chest. I knew I needed help, but asking for it felt like admitting defeat, exposing myself in ways I had always avoided. Yet deep down, a small voice told me there was someone who might understand. Someone who might not laugh at my vulnerability. That someone was Olivia. We had never been close. Our relationship existed as mere shadows of what sisters could be, but desperation has a way of breaking down barriers. With a trembling resolve, I approached her one quiet evening. Olivia, I began softly, trying to mask the quiver in my voice. Could you help me with my studies? I'm struggling more than I can handle. There was a pause, an eternity wrapped in silence, and for a moment, I feared rejection. But then she looked at me with an intensity I'd never seen before, a warmth and understanding that reached places within me I hadn't realized were cold. Of course, she said simply, her words tender balm to my anxious soul. As we sat together over textbooks and notes, something unexpected unfolded between us. A genuine connection blossomed where before there had been only distance. Her patience and encouragement became a lifeline, tethering me to hope anew. In the stillness of shared struggle, we discovered pieces of ourselves reflected in each other's eyes, a bond forming through whispered confessions and laughter-lightened burdens, slowly weaving us closer together than ever before. And so began the rediscovery of sisterhood, a fragile thread turned into an unbreakable line by shared trials and newfound trust. It hit me like a tidal wave crashing over the shore. Olivia's sacrifice wasn't just noble, it was invisible until now. For years, I'd been blind to the scales tipped so unfairly in our family dynamics. It wasn't until I caught that fleeting glimpse of her resilience, masked beneath layers of forced smiles and quiet endurance, that my heart truly began to ache. How had I missed it all this time? Each family dinner, each casual dismissal my parents dished out in Olivia's direction, her interests, her achievements, they were always overshadowed by the praise lavished upon me. I saw it clearly one evening as she sat across the table, her eyes dim yet accepting. My heart clenched with a newfound understanding. Grace, she'd once whispered when I asked why she never protested these injustices. It's easier this way, for everyone. Her voice trembled slightly but held a strength I'd overlooked. Standing there in our living room, the walls thick with decades of favoritism and unspoken truths, a fire ignited within me. The warmth of Olivia's sacrifices should not have been met with such chill indifference from those who ought to love us equally. My pulse quickened as I resolved to change what should never have been accepted. Mom, Dad, I began one day, my voice firm yet trembling at its edges. a blend of fear and determination. Their heads turned toward me expectantly. It's time we talk about how Olivia has been treated. Silence fell like a shroud over us. Even as my heart pounded against my ribs like a caged bird, courage surged through my veins. This was for Olivia, the sister who'd silently bore more than her share, and for myself, trapped between loyalty and justice. With every word spoken, every truth laid bare, I felt the balance tipping at last. Standing on the stage, surrounded by a sea of eager faces and bright futures, I was supposed to feel proud. Instead, all I could sense was a gnawing tension gripping my heart as I clutched the crumpled speech in my trembling hands. For months, I had imagined this moment, my moment, as a culmination of years of hard work and perseverance. But as the applause echoed around the auditorium, unease overshadowed my excitement. Taking a deep breath, I approached the podium. The microphone awaited me like an old adversary I needed to conquer. This is it, I thought to myself, my chance to finally be seen and heard. As I scanned the crowd for familiar faces, searching for my parents' reassuring smiles, the school principal stepped up beside me. There was something about his presence that made my skin prickle with foreboding. Before Olivia begins her speech, he announced, his voice booming with authority, we have some special surprises planned for today's ceremony. Surprise? My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't part of the script we rehearsed. What was he talking about? The audience murmured with anticipation, and so did my inner turmoil. Had everyone else known about this? Or was this just another twist in a life that seemed all too eager to keep me off balance? Suddenly, loud music filled the air, a celebratory anthem ringing through every corner of the gymnasium, and images began flashing on a large screen behind me. Photos from our school years, faces frozen in time with joy and laughter. But also moments I'd rather forget. Awkward teenage phases captured without mercy. I felt exposed, vulnerable under the spotlight that now shone even brighter than before. Was this really meant as a tribute? Or just another reminder that my narrative wasn't entirely mine anymore? As the surprise unfolded, my grip on my speech tightened, a lifeline amid swirling uncertainty, and I knew I had no choice but to brace myself for what might come next. As I stood before the crowd, a sea of faces looking up at me with expectation, a nervous energy coursed through my veins. This wasn't just any speech, it was my moment of truth. Words caught in my throat as I inhaled deeply, searching for strength in the shadowed corners of my heart where pain had once thrived. Resilience, I began, the word hanging in the air like a challenge. Silence spread across the room. It was almost palpable, wrapping around me like an old friend. We often think resilience is about enduring hardship, I continued, my voice gaining confidence with each syllable. But it's more than that. It's about recognizing our worth even when those who should see it don't. I saw subtle shifts among the listeners, heads nodding slowly, eyes softening in understanding, and it fueled me to push deeper into this cathartic journey. My mind flashed to the countless nights spent craving acknowledgement from my parents, the endless attempts to earn their love that always fell short. Without naming names, without pointing fingers explicitly, I laid bare the emotional wilderness I'd navigated. Sometimes, I said softly, yet powerfully enough to reach even the back row. The people who are supposed to hold us up become the ones we must rise above. And that's okay because it teaches us that true strength comes from within. A hush fell over the auditorium, a sacred silence filled with shared unspoken stories, and I felt something shift inside me. Liberation. In that moment of raw exposure and unshed tears, I realized this was not just a speech, it was a release. My resolve solidified as I concluded with words not just meant for them, but for myself as well. Never let anyone's failure to see your worth define you. With that final note resonating within me and out into the world, I stepped down from the podium transformed. Standing there, under the glaring lights of the university auditorium, felt like stepping onto a battlefield of emotions. Each face in the crowd seemed to blur into a single, expectant entity as they awaited the announcement. I felt my heart clamor against my chest, a vivid reminder of every sleepless night and moment of doubt that had led me here. As the university president took to the stage, His voice was a steady anchor against the swirl of anticipation. Today, he began, pausing for effect like a conductor leading an orchestra to its crescendo. We celebrate not just academic excellence, but unparalleled determination. My breath caught as I realized he was about to reveal more than just my grades. This year's top GPA belongs to someone whose journey is nothing short of inspiring, he continued, his words slicing through the air with precision. A student who has not only excelled academically, but also built a six-figure business while receiving zero support from her family. Those words echoed within me, stirring memories both bitter and empowering. I felt exposed, yet liberated as he spoke. The room buzzed with whispers, my secrets now public knowledge. Part of me wanted to shrink back into anonymity. Another part relished this moment where all could see what I had endured and achieved despite abandonment's shadow. As applause erupted around me, I couldn't help but reflect on the countless times I nearly gave up. Nights spent in solitude crafting business strategies when others were out celebrating their youth. The void left by those who should have been my champions loomed large in my life, but never blocked my path. This recognition wasn't just an acknowledgement of achievements, it was validation. A powerful testament that even without familial ties binding me to success, I had forged my own way. And standing there amidst cheers and congratulations, I realized this was only the beginning. When I first heard the news about the scholarship, a wave of emotions crashed over me. The Olivia Martin Resilience Scholarship, my name, permanently etched into something so meaningful, recognizing my journey, the trials and triumphs that had shaped me. It felt surreal, but fitting. Standing in front of the school auditorium on the day of its announcement, memories swirled around me like ghosts whispering tales of survival and strength. Each chair slowly filled with students and faculty members, their expectant eyes focused on the podium where I was about to speak. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Looking back, I began, my voice trembling slightly but gaining strength with each word. There were times when I thought I couldn't make it through another day. My eyes scanned the room, meeting sympathetic gazes that encouraged me to continue. But here we are, celebrating resilience, my resilience, and yours too. A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd. They understood hardship's shadow. I paused, allowing my story, the struggles with toxic relationships and family injustices, to unfold silently in their minds. Though not every detail needed voicing today, each person knew someone who carried similar burdens. This scholarship is not just about honoring what I've endured, I continued, drawing strength from within as I saw nodding heads connecting with my journey. It's about acknowledging that inside each one of you lies a wellspring of resilience ready to rise when challenged. As applause filled the room, warmth enveloped me like a long overdue embrace. The scholarship wasn't just for me. It was a beacon for everyone who'd ever been made to feel small or powerless. Leaving the stage, hope and gratitude surged through me in equal measure. This was only the beginning. The world would now see not just Olivia Martin's endurance, but her indomitable spirit.